Hey, and welcome back to the Radical Podcast. I'm Ryan McKenna, and we're back with more radical ideas, more perspectives that might alter the way that you see the world, might alter the discussions you have in your day-to-day life with your colleagues, your neighbors, your friends, your family. You know, we can get away from talking about mindless blather, celebrity gossip, fake issues and fake concepts like some of the ones I've talked about in the past. Start to break down our collective illusions just by having the conversations. First step to breaking an illusion is to become aware of it. The rest usually sorts itself out. What is seen cannot be unseen, so to speak. So that's the Radical Podcast, and here I am. I'm Ryan McKenna. And if you're new to the show, then I'm just going to tell you that I don't do call-ins yet, so I don't have a co-host or guests at this point in the show, although I have just figured out how to integrate it all and how to do a call-in show if need be, or when I have an appropriate guest. So that is coming up. Mostly, though, it's just me driving and talking. And just trying to get your brains going and ideas flowing. Introduce some things that I've picked up over the years. Some information that's flowed my way that I'm trying to bounce back out, because I think I've certainly found it incredibly valuable. So I think that most of you will too. It's all stuff dealing with the universal experience. You know, there's lots of things that women experience that men don't experience. Lots of things that ethnic minorities experience that white people generally don't experience. We all come from different backgrounds, but there are universal threads that run through all of us. There's a connection with the earth, with the universe, with time, with consciousness. All of these things are elements of the universal experience. It's the ego experience that's individual, and it's unique because no one has the same experiences, the same information, the same ideas that you do. Not exactly, but still dependent. The ego experience is a product of everything else, because you wouldn't have had those experiences if everything hadn't have fit together just so to arrive you at each one of those moments. So I talk about universal concepts. Things that affect all of us, and things that interfere with all of us. They make our lives less pleasant, more dysfunctional. One last note before I get into today's topic. I recently started a GoFundMe page. There's a link to it on the Spreaker page for the Radical Podcast. If you are unhappy with the audio quality, if you would like me to record more often, if you'd like me to have some really cool guests on, then send me what you can. A lot of podcasts do ads. I'd rather not do ads. If my listeners give me $1, $2, I can reinvest that in the show, and also, maybe pay for, food and rent and things like that for my family. But ideally, I'd like to put it all back into the show. However, if I can't pay for food and pay for rent, then there won't be a show, so it all kind of goes to the same place. What I will tell you is, if you do decide that you think that the show is worth donating to, then I will absolutely use your money in a way that would make you happy. I will absolutely use it on either supplementing my life so that I can afford to take the time to do these shows, or on making the show better and more widespread to get more people talking about radical ideas. One of those two things will happen, but it won't get spent on toys, it won't get spent on clothes. It won't get spent on any sort of luxuries or, frivolous things. Because like I said, I don't want to do ads. I don't want to do ads, and I want to continue to be credible. I don't want to be beholden to anyone. That having been said, if I need to, you may see ads on a future episode of the show. If I do ads, then they will only be for small and medium-sized businesses where they're doing something responsible and something radical. Something that stands to change the world for the better. So that's my promise to you. If I do end up having to inundate you with some sort of message about a product, it'll be a product that I really, really, really believe helps you. But if you don't want to hear that stuff, then go to the GoFundMe page and click on donate and give me whatever. I don't know what the minimum is on there, but give me 50 cents. I don't care. Whatever you'd like. It's a democratic process. If you're happy with the way the show is now, great. If not, then donate and I will make it better. All right, into today's topic. Revolution. It's happening now. And we've all, at least I have, and I know there's a lot of you out there, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably thinking at least a little bit along the lines of some form of revolution. But what's happening now? Why is it a revolution? A movement is not the right phrase, because a movement involves trying to introduce a new idea or get rid of an old idea in favor of the new idea. But movements work within the existing system. Movements seek to guide an existing system. Revolution seeks to take down the existing system and replace it. A lot of people hear revolution and they think of coup d'etats, taking over a country. They think of violence, they think of disorder, they think of government services failing, essential services failing, food shortages. Very scary stuff. But you don't need violence for a revolution, at least not now. You don't need it. What you need is collective disobedience and collective shift away from the current system towards something new. You don't need to get rid of the old system physically. When Bernie Sanders talks about a political revolution, what he's saying is that the policies that he wants to implement and the ideas and the tone and the structure that he wants to set for the country and that he wants everyone's help to do are going to be so radically different from what is currently there that it will constitute a revolutionary change. Moreover, a revolution cannot be done by a leader. It doesn't make sense. You're already in charge of the country. So what are we really trying to do for Bernie right now? Why is it important that he gets into the White House? Because he'll have a platform. Credibility, endorsement, and a mandate. There is no better platform to speak the truth from, if you're brave enough, than the Oval Office. People understand that information coming from that room, if that camera's turned on, if your TV show at night is interrupted, something is happening, something important. Stop what you're doing and listen. That's an amazing amount of power. Everyone makes the argument that Bernie Sanders is not going to be able to implement policy in Congress because it'll be a Republican-controlled Congress, and therefore they'll stop anything. But that's short-sighted thinking. It's also thinking within the old way of doing things. Because the old way of doing things is the president assisting the media and assisting the corporate structure by obfuscating, by confusing the issues. Bernie Sanders doesn't do that. So that's why he's talking about a political revolution. Because all it takes is informed citizens. People who are being told the truth about what is happening. And then allowing the democratic process to take its course. Because if the president tells you that the banking industry is ripping you off, if the president tells you that the defense industry is driving war abroad and the deaths of American and Canadian soldiers and so on and so forth, if they tell you that the pharma industry has been directing the FDA for years, then you will get upset about it, and I don't care which side of the party line you stand on. If you're told that from a respected, credible platform, from a respected, credible person, you'll get upset. So, this is threatening, not only to Democrats, but to Republicans too. Bernie Sanders is the Republicans' worst-case scenario, just as it is the vast majority of Democrats' worst-case scenario. Because they're all backed by the same people. But they don't work for those people, they work for you. What that means is if you get the Republicans and the Democrats in any given community to be unanimous in their anger, in their passion, in their conviction, then that representative, regardless on which side of the aisle he sits, has got to do what he's told by his constituents. That's what happens when you get rid of party lines and you stop working against each other. You can unite. We're stronger together. That's the nature of a revolution. You cannot do it with one person. You can't do it with a handful of people. You need the many, which is the oppressed, which is you, to rise up against the few. But we don't need a repeat of the French Revolution. We don't need a repeat of the United States War of Independence, because we have communication. They didn't have that then. How do you get the word out to people spread out across a country when all you've got is horseback and carrier pigeons? Maybe telegraph in its infancy. You can't. So you don't have any choice but to raise an army and go from city to city, state to state, province to province, and fight. But we have a choice. We can spread the information about what is happening. Bernie doesn't have to do it himself. We can do it. We can point out what's going on. Bernie is the right person for the president, but the revolution doesn't start and it doesn't end with him. He's a catalyst, and a much-needed one. And if he makes it into the White House, it will advance our efforts tremendously. But the revolution happens with or without Bernie. The revolution's happening now. The fact that there is support for what he's saying, the fact that we're working outside of the mainstream media to get his message through, the fact that in Arizona, when they tried to suppress the vote, where they're still trying to suppress the vote, people spoke up, and they spoke loud, and they pointed it out. They got mad, and they directed their energy in a productive way. Not in violence, not in fear, not in anything, but trying to solve the problem. That's what you do. That's what you do. when you're in that situation, you try to solve the problem. You do what you can to solve the problem. You don't let yourself get caught up in the drama of it all. You don't let yourself get sucked into it. You try to solve the problem. You take a step back and you look at it. And that's what Bernie supporters did. Why? Because they weren't working on fear or anger. They're working on love and trying to make things better for everybody. And the harder we work together, the better we work together, the more we can do together. The more we communicate, the more we share, the more we make things make sense, the better this world can be. And we can do it together. We can point out the illusions, we can break them down, and we can end them. And we can start to work with what is. And that's the real revolution. I've posted so many times, there has to be a revolution, but it has to be a revolution of consciousness. There is a very, very, very basic law. I'm going to call it a law because I have never seen an exception to the rule. And it's my law. Well, it's not just mine. I'm quite sure many, many people have said the same thing. I'm quite sure that many, many people have made the same observation. But this isn't something that I read yesterday. This is something that I've been thinking for a very long time. You can't have a violent revolution. Because it's not a revolution at all. The idea behind a revolution, like I said, is to take the old way of doing things and replace it with something new. However, the old way of doing things is force and violence. You cannot use force and violence to get rid of the old way of doing things because it is the old way of doing things. And however you start something new, how you start it, the spirit, the means, the methods that you use will dictate the nature of that which you are creating. Something created out of love will flourish and be loving and be compassionate and be open. Something created out of anger, out of fear, out of greed will be closed. It will produce scarcity because you will have greed. It will produce competition to the point of aggression. Once again, because you have scarcity. Fighting. Blaming each other, division, separation. So you can't have a violent revolution. It won't work. It won't get rid of violence. Violence cannot do that. And it was indeed Martin Luther King who said that, or something very, very much like it. Violence cannot get rid of violence. Only love can do that. Only light can erase the darkness. You can't fight darkness with darkness, and you can't really fight fire with fire. You'll just get an inferno. The revolution means not accepting what we're told anymore. It means coming up with our own ideas of how things work. It means basing it off of many, 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 many sources of information, all conflicting. Rooting through the information for the truth. What makes sense? What doesn't make sense? Hold this up next to this and say, does it fit? Deductive reasoning. Analysis. That's where the revolution lies. Because the oppression lies in illusion and lies. You don't need to get rid of the system. That's not going to do anything for you. What you need is to get rid of the illusion. And the system will go away on its own. Apologies, folks. Had to step away from the mic for a few minutes. I'm back now, though. So back to revolution. Like I say, you can't have a violent political revolution, or it's not a real revolution. You have to meet what's going on with its antithesis, with its opposite, with that which cancels it out. So what's going on right now is basically fear. It's all fear-driven. Religion is fear-driven. Government is fear-driven. Obviously, the existence of militaries and a defense industry and guns, that's all fear-driven. Aside from hunting, but we'll go into hunting on another day. And vegetarianism and conservation. That might be my next episode, in fact. However, fear is a product of a sense of disconnect, a sense of separation from others. When we feel connected, we feel secure. We don't feel fearful. When we feel like we're part of something larger than ourselves, we don't feel fearful, especially if that's something else. That connection is one of love. Not possession, not lust, not anything except love. And when I say love to me, at its purest form, means to look at another and to see yourself in them. And to want every bit as good a life for them as you want for yourself. Every bit of happiness that you want for yourself, you want for them because they are you and you are them. And to me, words are a very poor way of expressing that. That's the root of it. And that's very important. If your relationship isn't rooted on that, with your partner, it's not going to work. It's not going to work unless you truly see them as an extension of you, with all the rights and respect that you give yourself. That's love. The connection. It's what Bernie Sanders inspires. What do you think socialism is? Democratic socialism. Democratic socialism is saying we're all one. We all deserve the same basic things on that basis. No one is elevated over another. And if they are, it's artificial and should be corrected. Certainly shouldn't profit off the backs of those you care about, of those that are part of you, part of your society, part of your larger human family. If you're doing that, if you're oppressing people in order to make your own life better, that's not out of love. That's greed. And incidentally, greed comes from fear too. Greed is a product of a fear of insecurity. You can see it especially in people who grew up with very little. Because of that, they're fearful of financial and physical insecurity. And so they hoard. And if they get rich, then also because they manage to come up through whatever sequence of events happen to happen, because of literally everything happening in the universe at each moment, they manage to escape the poverty and escape the scarcity. And this creates a trick in our minds and makes us think that somehow you did something right, and you worked hard, and everyone else is doing something wrong, and they're not working hard, they're being lazy, because if you could do it, they could do it. But you had a different sequence of events. You had different information available to you, and you learned different things through your experiences. It gave you an edge over other people, whether you're aware of it or not. And it's not something you can take credit for. It's not something you can blame them for not having it. It's just what happened. You didn't control it. You didn't make it happen. It just happened. But that's what democratic socialism is. It's love. It's getting rid of the fear, seeing the illusion of the fear, and being able to get past it, to step through it, and to take the energy that that fear gives you. Remember, in my fear episode, I talked about how fear and anger are just energy that's not being used right. So long as you take that fear of separation, fear of harm, fear of financial insecurity, fear of social instability, and you turn it into love and connection with everyone else, every other piece of life on this earth. You don't have to like your neighbor. You don't have to agree with your neighbor, but they're part of you. And if they suffer violence, if they suffer misfortune, everyone suffers, whether you see it or not. Every bit of misfortune, every bit of pain, every bit of sadness, every bit of hurt, every bit of anger, every bit of violence adds to the total that is being experienced by the collective. And what is happening to the collective is happening to each individual. Whether you are aware of it or not, you will experience the repercussions. Not because of anything you've done, but because you're part of it. You're part of everything that's happening. You are not separate from it. It does not go on without you. Even when you die, you will be returned to it, and you will continue to be a part of it. Now and forevermore, you are this world, this universe. And so, when we push through our fear, and we see that we're all connected, we see how we're all connected, we see that we cannot favor one over another. Regardless of what we perceive their intellect to be, regardless of, behavioral issues that we judge or whatever, regardless of anything, of any judgment, of any human analysis. When you step back and you look at the big picture, on the scale of many galaxies, we're all exactly equal. Us and the stars, bacteria, the particles, the dust, everything is a part of the whole. That means it's all equal. It all has equal importance. It all has to be here in this moment. When we see that, that's the revolution. When we see how we're all connected, that's the revolution, because you can't go from that perception, that understanding, that light bulb moment. You can't go from that back to fear. You can't go from that back to judgment. You can't go from that back to looking at the person next to you like they're a stranger, like they have nothing to do with you, like they're on their own. No, we're not. No one is. No one's on their own. You experience life in your head, but all of life is in there with you. All of the now is in there with you. It's all there for you to engage with, for you to imagine, for you to strategize on, theorize on, apply, dissect. We're all together. Because it's all one thing. And the separation is a trick of the mind. It allows us to compare and to contrast what's going on around us. But it's not real, it's a tool. All illusion is a tool, and if we know why it's there, then we can use it properly. We can see that the illusion of separation exists to allow us to imagine things differently. It allows us to take individual elements of the greater system and to manipulate them in our mind, independent of that system. But that ability to manipulate something independently only exists in our mind, and only for the purpose of being able to figure out what it is and what it does and how to make it better. It's when we take that perception and we translate it out into the world around us of life being things. Because life is not things. Life is processes and systems and a swirl, a vortex of everything coming together for a brief moment to form you and I and everything else. The form that your body is in right now will never be like that again. It will never hold that exact form again. You will never be this you again. Because you is a product of the now. And that is the revolution. The revolution is knowing who you are. Who everyone is. Who we all are. Because you can't see that. You can't see the enormous swaths of evidence and of synchronicity that support it. If you want the evidence, message me. I will send you tons and tons and tons of information. Or you can do a Google search and find it yourself, because it's there for the taking. Ebooks and podcasts and documentaries. Thrive is a good one. The Venus Project is a good one. If you're the sort that likes to watch. If you search Alan Watts, The Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are, or Alan Watts, the book on the taboo against knowing who you are, PDF, the very first Google search result will be a free ebook that you can just click and download. Wonderful walkthrough of how it all works, of the interplay between light and dark, black and white, and who you are at your core. And that is the revolution. That's happening right now. We're seeing it. We have physically connected each other, as many as we can, and growing every day. We have done that. We have manifested that in our world, that connection. We did that out of love. If we were truly, at our core, supposed to be fearful, then we would have cut those wires the first time someone gave us an opposing opinion, or posted something that offended us, or disgusted us, or horrified us. We would have cut the wires. But the truth of the matter is we crave it. We crave the connection and the love, because it's who we are at our core. And we have been led away from that. And it's very possible that in the grand scheme of things, it's a lesson. Because everything usually is. The lesson is making us endure the pain of our collective separation for so long, and the physical, emotional, mental pain that it causes, the stagnation that it causes, for so long that we learn, that we feel that pain and we stop doing it. Because maybe there was no other way for us to learn. Maybe it was in front of our eyes the whole time, and we could have escaped at any moment. But we didn't. Because humanity, like many things, many creatures, is a sort of being that needs to be backed into a corner in order to change its ways. Needs to be shown that there is no other way to do this. You can't keep touching the hot burner without getting burned. You have to leave it be. You have to stop trying to force things. Start trying to accept things. And to discuss and to use our wonderful methods of communication and exchanging ideas to make the world better. So the revolution is happening. It's happening politically. We can see this in the United States. We can see it in Canada too, with Justin Trudeau becoming elected. Well, the Liberal Party is much like the Democratic Party in the United States. And, well, it is certainly tied to many big corporate schemes. Many people within it are certainly corrupt. The vision that Justin Trudeau presented to the Canadian people is much like Bernie's, except Canada had a shorter distance to travel. But it was a message of hope, of optimism, of love, of connection, of helping each other, sharing the wealth, and trying to do what's right. Now, Justin Trudeau's dropped the ball a few times thus far. Continues to support pipelines, continues to support the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and continues to do arms trade with Saudi Arabia, who murder children in Yemen every day and commit war crimes. However, I've told you before, this isn't about one person. It's never about the individual standing on the pulpit. It's about the people listening to the message and the message that they're resonating with. Because that tells you what people really want. The vision that they're developing for where we could go and what we could be. And that's the revolutionary thing. That's what the internet has given us. That's what this exchange of information, the destruction of ignorance, is doing for us. Every time we get online and we start talking about the things that matter to us, we're performing a revolutionary act. It used to be said everywhere, you do not talk about politics and religion in polite company. What absolute nonsense. It must have been a politician or religion who introduced that notion. Now they say that it was to avoid conflict, but we've proven time and time again that we can have intelligent conversations with each other without provoking conflict, at least not physically. It's not about that. It was about restricting our access to differing opinions under the guise of politeness and propriety and manners. There's nothing wrong with manners, but most of them can be covered under do not be a slob and force other people to deal with it, and be kind to yourself and others. You can really boil all manners down to that. Being kind, saying please, and not assuming that someone owes you something. Saying thank you. And acknowledging what they've done. That's just being kind. And while we can teach each other the words to say, we understand because we know how we want to be treated. We know how we want people to respond to our actions and to our approaches and our conversations with acceptance and love. That's what we look for every time we start a conversation with someone new, is acceptance and love. Connection. So what I say to you is this. Look at what's happening. See what message more people are resonating with. See what surprises each day brings, because it's changing so fast. You have no idea. You can measure the rate of change in the world by the speed at which information travels. And it's traveling faster now than it was a month ago. More of it is traveling now than there was a month ago. And it's accelerating. It's getting faster. In 2 weeks, there will be more again. And you can look at this in every aspect of humanity, the change that reflects. Because we are all part of the whole. If one part changes, it causes the rest to change. We are all reflections of the whole thing. We created the internet, and now the internet is recreating us. And we will become a new thing. We will become the humans plus internet. George Carlin used to say, there's all this plastic in the world. Well, so what? It'll break down. Not in our lifetimes. Maybe not even in the lifetime of the human civilization. But it'll break down. And then it'll be the earth plus plastic. And maybe we were just put here to make plastic. Because there wasn't anything else that could do it. Maybe that's our contribution. But that's not the point. The point is, the revolutionary act is love, and it always has been. Jesus is a debatable character, but the core of his message was love and connection, recognizing the you in the other. Someone did a secular translation of the Bible, one that eliminates all the fundamentalist and obviously planted politically allegories, myths, and it just focuses just on the core things, the core teachings of Jesus Christ, or Yeshua, or Joshua, or whatever you want to call him. And it was all love. Very much the same as Lao Tzu of Taoism. Very much the same as Buddha, the Hindus. It's all the same core, the connection. We are all one. And these people that keep talking about love, well, they get shot in the head or put up on a cross. It scares people for a little while longer. Because fear is the only tool they know how to fight love with, but it doesn't work. Because when love comes back, it'll be stronger and bigger and better than it was before. Because it's a natural process. You can't keep love down any more than you can keep a storm down. You might be able to disrupt it, delay it, but it'll go around. Just like water. Water always finds a way around. So fight the revolution. If you see a message that resonates with you, that speaks of love and connection, and caring about each other, and recognizing the truth of how things are, scientifically, logically, intuitively, share it. Share everything that resonates with you, everything that speaks to your heart. Share it with your friends and your family. Share it on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, whatever you're on. Start a podcast and do what I'm doing. And talk. And get people talking. That's the revolutionary act. Introduce new information and new sources to people who were previously unaware of them. Don't attack ideas. Give ideas. Don't shoot people down. Suggest something better. Say why. And do it with love in your heart. Not anger, not jealousy, not a desire to be right, but do it because you care about them, the person you're talking to, and you want them to know that you care about them. You want them to know that it's in them too, and that you're all one. We're all one. The revolution is happening all around us every second of every day, and faster and faster. And we're winning. Don't believe the horrors on TV and the news. Don't believe the fear. Believe what's happening, what people are choosing over and over now. They're choosing peace, they're choosing love and compassion. You can choose it too. Don't buy into the fear. Don't be told not to vote for who you believe in, who you trust, because of the fear of them not getting in, and someone else who's so-called worse. Well, if they're worse, then all the people right now demanding love and compassion and connection from our world and from our society will demand it of that person. And if everyone's there demanding it, then it'll happen, because they won't have a choice. And that's the revolution. Don't give them a choice. Get your community together. If you're in law enforcement, talk to your friends. Tell them what's happening. The fear that they're sold. If you're military, start to question your orders. You're taught not to. I know, I was there. Never in combat, but in the military. You're taught to never to question, never to ask why. Well, start asking why, even if it's just inside your head. And when you get your buddies aside for a smoke or a coffee or whatever, or a drink, you talk about radical ideas. You don't need to directly contradict your superiors. You just need to talk about good, loving ideas. Because that undercuts every single part of fear. And you don't have to attack the ideas directly. You just have to give people something better. Anyone saying, and I apologize if you have a small child listening or anything like that, I'm going to swear, but if there's anyone out there saying, fuck the police, well, this we are one stuff, that's them too. And for that matter, it's the rich too. It's the CEOs, the bankers. They're all part of us. And you know what? If I know anything, if any of the things that I'm saying right now are factual and logical and true, then they live in a world of misery, and we should pity them. And we should give them the chance to be embraced by us. No cutting off of heads, no shaming, no ridiculing, no imprisoning. You understand? That's not this sort of revolution. That's not a revolution at all. That's just continuing the same old tricks. Fear and anger. Revenge. Blame. It's love. And anyone who tells you different is trying to sell you fear. Love your enemies because they're you. And because they help to make you who you are. If you're passionate about a cause, just know that you'd have nothing to be passionate about right now if it wasn't for them. They're part of it. Every conflict is two sides of a whole. So we have to have a true revolution of love where everyone's included. Even if you're against it, you're included. Bernie Sanders isn't saying, free Medicare for my supporters, and everyone else can bugger off. He's saying free Medicare for all. No exceptions. Free tuition for all, no exceptions. That's the sort of love we need in this world. Justin Trudeau. Inclusivity. Created probably the most diverse, gender-balanced cabinet that we've seen. and has tried to make strides with Native Americans and Canadians, tried to re-bridge the ties between Canada and the USA. He's making climate change a priority, and he's trying to make Canada a leader in peace on the world stage. He's made some slip-ups. I think those will get corrected because there's enough people like you and me yelling at the top of our lungs saying, this isn't you, you can do better. And we got to tell each other that. We can do better. And we will. And we are. The revolution is now. This is it. You're in it. Things are changing. And it's not going to stop, and it's not going to slow down. And there will be turmoil ahead. Because how could there not be? But with love, we can all get through it peacefully. And we can all be better off at the end, having learned something. I'm not saying we're going to have a utopia tomorrow. I'm not saying people are just going to throw down their guns and go and hug each other. I'm saying we can start a path towards that that's real, that has a basis in love and compassion. And we can start to instill those values, those understandings into people by sharing ideas and information, by talking, and by caring. Congratulations, this is the era of change, and you're in it. I can't imagine a more interesting, dynamic time in the universe, in human history. I'm sure the universe has more in store for us than that. But in human history to this point, this is it. So don't yearn for another time, and don't yearn for things to be different from what they are right now, because tomorrow it will be different. So long as we keep working. So long as we keep sharing radical ideas, promoting radical change, and getting away from our illusions, this will keep accelerating. That's the end of the show for today. Like I said, every single episode, I want your comments, I want your feedback, I want the discussion. If you have questions, criticisms, suggestions, anything, bounce them off of me. Tweet at me at truly_radical. Email me at ryan.lee.mckenna@gmail.com. Now you can message me on Facebook, although I don't really use it much. Same name. Just search for it. It's my real name. I don't hide behind anything. Perhaps we'll do a Periscope if enough people show interest. If you want me to do Periscope on my commute next time, let me know. I'll fire it up. I plan on doing a election fraud show, voter fraud, voter suppression, just a rundown of the tactics. And this isn't really a radical idea or a radical statement, but it does go with the sharing information thing, part of my campaign. So tomorrow night, Saturday night, we've got primaries. So we'll release prior to the primaries, provided I have time. And I'll talk about what's going on in Arizona, what's happened, what's going to happen, in my view. And we'll talk about things in Washington State, and I might just do a live show at that time, commenting on things as they happen. Alternatively, if that doesn't work out, then I will do a show at the end of the night discussing what's happened. Either way, I'd love if you tune in. I appreciate everyone listening to this show. Because you're listening, even if you're disagreeing with me, you're thinking. And you're going to go talk. because that's what we do when we think. We go and we talk. We bounce stuff off each other. So you're part of it. Radical ideas are changing you as the sound waves enter your ear and go into your brain and start to shift your neural patterns. Just what happens when we get new ideas put in our heads. And I'm changing because my pathways are changing because I have to figure out a way to convey them from the heart. And you know, it's not really that hard, though. You just stop thinking and let things flow. Nothing I do on the show is scripted or written. Usually I come up with a topic a few minutes before. Sometimes I plan it out around events. But usually, I pick up the microphone and I start talking. Maybe with a single word or an idea around it. But you just go. And you can do the same thing with writing or painting or music or anything. You just start doing it because it's what you want to do. Because it's what makes you feel fulfilled in that moment. Because it's what takes you into the source, into the whole, into consciousness. So do it. Create. Share. I'm Ryan McKenna. That's the Radical Podcast for today. Radically yours. Have a great Easter weekend.